this is part of the problem, isn't it, though, with the whole, you know, Yvette Cooper strategy, you know, where she's gone, oh, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do a series of local inquiries, some of which may be related, some of which may have overlapping, you know, evidence, because there might be similar people involved from one town to another. But this is why they need a national inquiry. And the only reason they're not really doing it is because Keir Starmer doesn't want to have to go back on his word, it seems to me.
I think, and there's also no doubt a lot of terror both within particular councils but at the national level as well about how much just the Labour Party's fingerprints will be all over this. As far as they were running a lot of these councils for a very long time when this decades-long abuse was taking place. Yes. So that's going to raise questions about turning a blind eye, about not taking this seriously. We've seen that in the inquiries we've already seen. To then roll that out across the country is obviously a...
and obviously now, when you know that Yvette Cooper's sort of department, if you like, believe that in fact mentioning grooming gangs is in fact some kind of exploitative right-wing manoeuvre to try and demonise Muslims. I mean, it really does beg a belief, doesn't it? Let's go back just to the Sun front page for a moment. Let's have a look at it. I was too scared to come out as gay, says sacked referee David Coote. I think we can see the Sun front page shortly. Basically, he says the cocaine was his escape, and he was not sober when he made his rant about Jurgen Klopp. I think we've got a clip here of him talking about how he has struggled.
Personal context. For me, it goes way back and relates to struggles that I've had over the course of time around my self-esteem, and that relates to my sexuality. So I'm gay, and I have struggled with feeling proud of being me over a long period of time. I've felt a deep sense of shame.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if he was straight having that conversation with us, saying that, you know, I mean, I don't think anyone in this day and age, I think I'm right in saying, would demonise somebody, even in football, for being gay.
And
would they?
Well, it is one of those things where it's probably a debate that football is yet to have in the same way that it has with other forms of bigotry, shall we say. But, you know, you don't have to be some horrendous, heartless cynic to think that there's something a little bit unseemly about being caught doing something you shouldn't have done. And whatever the context for it is, whatever past troubles you've had that might have led you into a situation where you are taking drugs, where you are doing things that you shouldn't do, it can't help but look like a deflection and to cheapen the issue that you claim to be wanted to talk about, which is, you know, the inability of people to come out in football or whatever. It just feels a bit... It was going to strike people as a bit tawdry, I think. I think so. A lot of pictures on the front page this morning of Princess of Wales Kate. Kate's candle for Holocaust victims, it says on the front of the Telegraph, lights a candle during the Holocaust Memorial Day service at Guildhall in London, where she also met Jewish survivors of the genocide. Meanwhile, King Charles became the first British monarch to visit Auschwitz yesterday, and they've got a picture of him on the front of the Daily Mail wiping a tear away at the ceremony in Poland. They've got quite a powerful front page as the royals mark the 80th anniversary of the Auschwitz liberation. Before that gateway of death, they gathered for the last time the handful of eyewitnesses to history's greatest abomination. I mean, it's one of those stories, isn't it, that no matter how many times you hear it and watch it and sort of take it in, it's so shocking what happened there. And you can't quite believe it. No, absolutely. And the way in which people seem to forget in the contemporary period the lessons that we should be gleaning to there, the kind of shocking polls that you see from time to time about the number of young people in particular who don't really know what it was. In some cases even a kind of creeping suspicion as to whether or not it actually took place around the fringes. This is an alarming indication that never forget, as it were, is not really being lived up to at the moment, especially in the context of the horrendous anti-Semitism that we've seen explode in the course of the past 2 years. Absolutely, and particularly nowadays with what's going on in the Middle East. Ernie says this: do you know what got to me today on the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz? It was when the lady said that she was 6 and she asked her mother what was all that smoke and the terrible smell, and she told her the truth because she didn't want to lie to her, and she then said she wasn't afraid because she thought that's just what happens to us Jews. It broke my heart. It is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, there's been some great movies made about it. I mean, Schindler's List, for me, is one of those just incredible. I know it's not about Auschwitz, but, you know, it's just an incredible story of people's courage in some ways and other people's absolute barefaced savagery. No, absolutely. Hard to believe that humans are capable of both those things. Completely. Isn't it? No, and it's one of those things where this is why these anniversaries are so important, not least because many of these survivors won't be at the next big commemoration.
Yeah.
We are sort of in danger of letting slip what needs to be learnt from that particular period in history, and particularly right now, in which that period in history gets used and abused and weaponised and used to knock down politicians. People don't particularly like the unique horror of it, and why that it's so important that not only just bigotry in general, but anti-Semitism, this poisonous, conspiratorial, annihilationist ideology, is kept in its box. Is so important, but that often gets missed nowadays in a debate that never seems to take a lot of those lessons seriously.
Well, the Home Office is obviously more interested in non-crime hate incidents, clearly. Let's talk about China, because an amazing story on a lot of the front pages this morning. Guardian's got it, Times has got it. China's mounted its most serious challenge to American dominance in AI after one of its startup companies created a powerful new program at a fraction of the cost of its US rivals, a thing called DeepSeek, which appears to have wiped $1 trillion off the US stock market, which is quite remarkable, isn't it? So basically it's a Chinese version of chatbot. No, I don't really understand what chatbot is already, so I mean, maybe you could explain to me what the Chinese version is.
Yeah, I mean, because people have heard of ChatGPT, they've heard of the American kind of AI companies who have been taking the world by storm in recent years. It was always going to happen that at some point China were going to enter this space in a big way. They've been putting a lot of money behind this, and obviously it raises a lot of questions, not just about are American companies going to be able to compete, how's that going to shake out, but also because of the fact that these companies in China that will be working on this, you know, they are very much involved with the Chinese state. This is, whilst there's always going to be some at that level coordination between some of these huge tech companies and the government. We've seen obviously Donald Trump putting a lot of money behind these new platforms for AI research. It obviously takes on a lot more sinister character when you're talking about the Chinese Communist Party and the way in which this can be manipulated. But this was always coming down the track, and I think that's why you saw the Trump administration last week make that big announcement with OpenAI, with all of the big tech people saying we were going to put...
This is a big $100 billion project with the data centres and all that. Absolutely. But I mean, the problem, I suppose, for using Chinese versions of it is that, from my understanding, chatbots basically and ChatGPT and everything operate with a combination of what's put into it, and so it will respond in that way with the knowledge that it has from inside, as it were. If you don't put things into it, it won't tell you those things. So in China, if it's censored in some way, and therefore you can't get certain answers out of it, it won't be really a true representation of reality, will it?
You know, that's a really good point. So there's that kind of sinister element to it. I suppose there's also a question about, you know, if an AI is only as good as the information that you give it, if you are giving it censored information, restricted information, because you are a totalitarian state, effectively, and it's filtering what these companies can do, is that also going to scupper their own efforts because you're just putting bad after bad? That would be an interesting question going forward. Can these tools still develop and be quite significant, even if they're being controlled to such a degree?
Manipulated, Well, I mean, one of the things that is worrying Americans is that basically these people have put this together for about £6 million. It's been developed, DeepSeek, for £6 million, whereas in America, sort of composite other organisations have spent 100 million to £1 billion pounds or dollars in sort of inveigling theirs. And there's a company called Nvidia, which has apparently lost $550 billion overnight. It used to be the world's most valuable public company. Now it isn't.
No, it's incredible. It's incredible what a kind of fragile lead it seems like America had over this particular area. And, you know, even though I think there's a lot of over-claiming about AI, people acting as if it's going to transform everything instantly, when sometimes you play around with these tools and you think they're often a lot more in their infancy than people like to let on. This is clearly where the focus, the money is going to be. And it's now taken on this almost, Cold War style space race dimension to it. So it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out.
I think we got a clip from Donald Trump talking about it, because he's a bit concerned about all the money that seems to have disappeared out of the stock market.
We're going to be placing tariffs on foreign production of computer chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals to return production of these essential goods to the United States of America. They left us and they went to Taiwan, which is about 98% of the chip business, by the way. And we want them to come back, and we don't want to give them billions of dollars like this ridiculous program that Biden has. Give everybody billions of dollars. They already have billions of dollars. They've got nothing but money, Joe. They didn't need money. They needed an incentive, and the incentive is going to be they're not going to want to pay a 25, 50, or even 100% tax. They're going to build their factory with their own money. We don't have to give them money. They're going to come in because it's good for them to come in. They're giving them money. They don't even know what they're going to do with it. I had people tell me, we have no idea, we didn't need money. They don't know if they're probably going to use the money to build in other places, other countries. It's a ridiculous plan, very expensive and ridiculous. The only way you'll get out of this is to build your plant. If you want to stop paying the taxes or the tariffs, you have to build your plant right here in America. That's what's going to happen at record levels.
Seems to be working so far, this tariff plan, doesn't it? I mean, he managed to get the Colombians to change their minds on bringing the migrants in, and now he's saying basically all of these superconductor companies are going to have to build factories in America, otherwise he's going to charge them a load of money.
No, absolutely, and that was the thing about these tariffs. They're a tool, as far as Trump sees them, to get what he wants. And as you say, so far it's been effective. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens soon. Coming up, we're going to talk about bins and council tax and all the sort of things that affect people's everyday lives here in the United Kingdom. Believe it or not, Sir Keir Starmer, before the election, said council taxes would never rise under Labour because you can rely on them to keep the taxes low. Well, that turned out not to be true either.